regular intro going. What up, though, people? It is your boy Detroit Kool-Aid, and usually I'm rocking out with Mr. Everything, Jeff Freddy. It was about that time for him to get going to the morning Woodward show, get that prep going, but he did stop in and say what up to me. And you see, we got Mr. Mike Curtis of the Detroit News, Pistons beat writer, on with us this morning. So that means that I got somebody to help me out with this drum roll real quick for the legend. We will always pay homage to him, whether he's on the show that day or not, because he was a big part of getting this platform off the ground. And just because of the type of person he is. So, hey, Mike, man, you ready to help me get this started?
Let's do it, man.
Let's do it, man. Hey, yo, shout out to the legend Detroit News, Rod Beard. Bro, hopefully you can jump on this morning. If not, I hope your day is wonderful, brother. But Mike, how you doing this morning, man?
Man, I'm good. It's good to be back on the show. Good to come on here and talk basketball. I can't remember the last time I was on, but I think the Pistons have maybe gotten a couple of more wins since then. But I'm just happy to be here, man.
I'm glad to have you on. It's always good basketball conversation we have you on. I love your perspective on the game. I love your perspective, how you kind of write it, how you cover it as well. So it's good to have you on. I told everybody that I wanted to wait until about a quarter of the way into the season before I started to give any real judgments about this squad. And really, I don't know how much, I feel like I need more time to really give a full judgment because we don't even have the straw that stirs the drink, which is Cade Cunningham. He's with his injury, and Jaden Ivey and Marvin Bagley started the season injured. It just Isaiah Stewart. It hasn't really given us something concrete to look at and make a full judgment on, but we got enough. I think we have a little bit to talk about here, man. So, I wanted to just ask you really quickly. I know to start the season, we all thought this team might be somewhere between 22 and 30 wins, and if they were peaking, 30 to 35 wins. Is this season going how you have expected it so far?
It is not.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us expected the Pistons to have as many injury troubles as they have. I think outside of maybe Hamidou Diallo and Killian Hayes, everyone else has missed at least one game due to injury or illness or just something of that nature. So I think we all were banking on this team to be completely healthy, but we all know that never happens in the NBA season. But it's tough, especially when you got your starting backcourt out for an extended amount of time. You mentioned Cade Cunningham. He's the guy that gets this team going, especially on the offensive end. They can't duplicate what he brings to the table as far as being a playmaker and kind of getting to that mid-range shot and getting his shot going. So, and then when you have Ivy out, I think he's missed the last 3 games due to right knee soreness, 3 or 4, ever since he kind of tweaked it during that Utah game. They've missed his speed and athleticism. So it's not going the way I envisioned, just partly due to injury. And I think you gotta chalk it up to that at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you answered why it's not kind of going to your expectation. That was supposed to be the second part of the question anyway. Because obviously I don't think that a lot of people, predicted a whole lot of wins to start the season. We knew that the start of the season was going to be a brutal schedule, and I thought they've won some games. I didn't expect them to. They've lost some games I thought that they should have won. But overall, when I look at 5 wins, they could have maybe 6 or 7 wins right now. But I couldn't see too many more wins up to this point to start the season. I thought they would be sitting at about 7 wins. They're at 5. So a little disappointed they're off their mark. But the injuries, how big a role do they play? I know that a lot of people want to be angry. They want to be mad. Obviously, Casey is going to be the lightning rod. And ironically, I feel like he doesn't mind that. For a young team whose head he's trying to keep above any of the troubled water, above any of the noise, I don't really feel like he minds taking on that lightning rod, taking on that blame. We were in the press conference last night, and he said, "Hey, this is on everybody." It's not like he came out and ripped the players. He said, "Man, the coaches got to do better We got to do better. Game plan got to do better. Players got to do better across the board. We got to do better. But as it relates to this, to the injuries, I'm
Mhm.
glad you went there with it because Troy Weaver at the beginning of the season, he kind of started this gauntlet of, they're ready to compete nightly, that they're
Yeah.
finally ready. He said that the first 2 years he effectively left Coach Casey out to dry. Got these quotes via, obviously he said on media day, but Keith Langlois had it in another article as well. So I'm gonna make sure that I give him
Mhm.
some credit because this is where I actually resurfaced these quotes. But he basically stated that he felt like he had left Coach Casey out to dry with the roster the first 2 years that they had. And that this year, going into this season, to your point, was the year that they had a full complement of roster, full complement of their roster. He basically said, I feel like we finally have a full complement of players. The first 2 years we didn't. We can go and compete every night. So the caveat for these guys competing and being better and all the things that we talked about early on in the season, it was based on this team being healthy,
Yeah.
effectively. And it's amazing. I sit back and I want to get upset sometimes, even or you know, a little bit more passionate about the things that they're doing. But I have to continue to look at the squad and say they've won games with lineups that I didn't even think we would see, with starting lineups I didn't even think we would see this year.
Yeah.
So it's that as it relates to my expectations, I thought they would have about 7 wins. They're a little off that mark. I do believe injuries are playing a big role. Is there anything else I have here? What to make of the defense? Now, Coach Casey has not been quiet or shy about this. He's been very, very, very adamant, blatant, open, honest since I think the beginning of this season that they're
Mhm.
still not just learning to play defense, but they're not a good defensive team right now.
Yeah.
What do you make of this, man?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the first thing that Dwayne Casey told fans at the open practice, open scrimmage at the beginning of the season, he pretty much said they want to be a defensive minded team. They want to hang their hats on the defensive end. They want to get stops. They want to protect their house. Last night, it didn't happen at all. New
Whew.
York was able to come in and drop 140 on them, partly due just to their 3-point shooting. Randall got hot early. I think he made 4 of his first 7 3-pointers. I think he attempted 8 3-pointers in the first quarter, which is
Man, oh
what
man, oh
most
man.
people take in a game. So
He's feeling way too comfortable.
yeah, it was his birthday, man. He had the green light.
Just wrong place, wrong time for the Pistons.
Yeah, so it's super interesting, especially when you consider the fact that they're switching pretty much everything. So you have guards on bigs, you have bigs on guards, and sometimes they're not able to adjust really quickly. I think that's a cause for how much offense and how much production, how much points they're giving up. But then I think you got to think they're just not good defenders. You don't have a lot of good one-on-one defenders that'll kind of accept the challenge of guarding the best player on the other team. I think it's good that Isaiah Stewart is back in the fold because he can kind of return to that stance as the defensive anchor. But I think you gotta have a lot more help when you're kind of limited on the defensive end like that. It's pretty interesting. I'm surprised that we haven't seen it yet, but I don't think we've seen them go zone much at all this season, and I think that may help.
That's a good observation. That's a really good observation. I thought that too. I know why. I guess they're trying to switch everything. I guess it takes advantage of some of their speed, some of their
Yeah.
athleticism, and the way that they want to play defense. If that's the way Coach Casey wants them to play defense, and they want to be able
Mhm.
to rely on that, because I believe, like you said, zone is a defense that um, most of us can play pretty well. The
Mhm.
weakest of defenders can make an impact on defense in a zone more so than a man to man. And with lineups out there like Saddiq Bey and Boyan when they started the season, I thought that that's where zone would have really, really, really helped them a lot.
Mhm.
As well as their rebounding sometimes too. But but I don't know. Man to man is supposed to be what actually can help a team rebound a little
Yeah.
bit better. And I don't know. They just don't seem to be. I wrote about this last night. they just don't seem to be real physical. And I think that the Knicks exposed them last night. I don't think that last night was an aspect of, the Knicks being that much, 30 points better than them. But last night, Coach Casey said he thought that the letdown game was going to be the one before.
Mhm.
Instead, they actually had a pretty good game. Instead, he felt like tonight was a letdown. They looked a little tired towards the end of the game, but from a physicality standpoint, the Knicks just every single time they played the Pistons, I said even in preseason, I think we talked about
Yeah.
this, Mike. They just continue to teach the Pistons what it means to play physical. So even if you don't have good, individual defenders, even if you're having troubles in your man to man or in your zone defense or whatever, play physical, play all out. Like I'm seeing too many and ones. I
Mhm.
That's not real indicative of the traditional Detroit Pistons teams. I'm still holding out the fact that they're learning defense. A lot of times these guys look like they're like, oh crap, somebody's cutting right behind me. And
Yeah.
you're not really seeing or hearing a lot of guys talking or anything like that. When I see Alec Burks out there, I see him talking a lot. A lot of the older guys, Rodney McGruder and such. Kate Cunningham was somebody else that just when he gets on the court, he seems to be a quiet guy, but as soon as he gets out there on the court, you just kind of see his mouth going, going, going. Jaden Ivey's
Mhm.
another guy. So when they're missing those types of guys or those guys are not as involved, I tend to notice the defense just seems to be a little bit more spaced out, just not in the positions, not reacting the fastest. Like you said it, they don't have a lot of individual, individually like highly talented defensive players, a
Mhm.
one-on-one type guys that can just go out there and you can depend on them to lock them down. I have been impressed with Killian Hayes and his defensive as of late.
Yeah.
I talked about in the preseason with Rod that Killian Hayes was the type of guy who every now and then you see him defensively really, really start to get going. And he's almost the type of guy who can wear the offensive player's jersey with how good he's defending him. We saw that a couple times last night where he just straight up took the ball out the hands of the ball handler and went the other way.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see his defense and his offense starting to take that uptick, in the right direction.
Mhm.
But other than him and maybe Hamidou Diallo, I think I've really, really appreciated the effort that Hami has been playing with lately. On the perimeter, man, it's been a little bit bleak. Our perimeters and our
Yeah.
wing defenders. I don't know where they can get the help from. I don't even understand really how a zone it'll help a little bit, but my goodness, they can't really go defend the 3-point line that well. So
Yeah, I'm not saying goes on for the entirety of the game, but just in
yeah,
spurt, maybe for a play, maybe
switch
for
things up.
yeah, just to switch things up.
Yeah. No, I feel you on that, man. I feel you on that one. It's I don't know with the defense. I was trying to look for solutions, and I think that obviously when you're looking for different wrinkles, you got to go with whatever you can come up with. And I think that zone
Mhm.
is one that can at least give this team a different breath, a different look. Sometimes rest their legs. I see Jalen Duren out there sometimes for as good as he is, and we're going to talk about him in a little bit here. For as good as
Yeah.
he is, sometimes it looks like he's lagging. After about him playing about 8, 9, 10 minutes, it looks like he's out there kind of dragging. Not necessarily his springs don't look the same. I don't know. Have
Mhm.
you noticed that at all or recognized that at all? That was just at least an observation I had. I was speaking with some people around me last night, and they were just like, "Yeah, he's boom, 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 boom," and then they notice for stretches of the game that they don't notice him though he's on the court.
Yeah, you can see it. I think that just goes to him still getting used to the NBA game, the intensity of it, how much of a toll it takes to literally be committed every single play. Like you got to be locked in, you got to be connected to your defender, because if not, they can go by you in the blink of an eye. So I think that's just him trying to get used to it.
Yeah,
Also, I think the biggest thing with him, and we saw this the other night, he has to stay out of foul trouble. Like that's kind of been a constant since the preseason. There have been times where he kind of stays out of foul trouble, and we see him have really good performances, but then
mhm,
those fouls kind of limit him, and we don't see him for the rest of the game. So I think that's the biggest thing that we got to see with him. It was encouraging last night to see he got an offensive rebound and he had a post score, which kind of got everybody off the bench.
oh, that little
Um,
fadeaway.
yeah, we haven't seen him do that much. So if he can kind of get that going, I think we'll be able to see him have more opportunities on the offensive end too.
Yeah, bro. Look, man, that shot last night reminded me of he just reminded me of like a baby Sheed. I saw some people calling him, and they say he looked like a little KG. It's interesting to see the comparisons we get, and we go back to his college days at Memphis,
Mhm.
where Rasheed Wallace was his assistant coach, and you can see some of the imprint there, man. There's definitely something there to it. I've seen him do this fadeaway now a couple times. Every time I see it, I tweet, "Yo, did we know he had this in his game?" And so, I think after like the fifth or sixth time, we just say, "Yeah, that's in his game." I like the approach, I guess, to his game. He's not going out there hunting for that.
Right.
We've seen guys like Andre Drummond come out there and hunt for those types of shots, hunt for those types of plays. With Jalen
Mhm.
Duren, I see a guy who's playing more within his game, and that's something I wanted to see. I wanted to see, is this a guy who's capable of going out there without looking for his own and getting 10 and 10? And I believe he is that guy. As long as he can continue to stay engaged, get his wind up, get his
Mhm.
basketball, get in basketball shape. Same thing that I believe plagued Marvin Bagley a little bit last year. They're learning the NBA game. It hits you. Kay Cunningham said it hit him. He said he didn't know what to expect. This year he knew.
Yeah.
So with Jalen Duren, I'm glad that he is playing within himself and not really, really going out there to kind of showboat or anything. I noticed that he likes to showboat after he's done something really, really good. After he's done something
Mhm.
like, yo, I've gotten the rebound and now I've dunked on your head. I'm gonna leave my hand up there just a little bit longer. And that's about the
Yeah.
extent of his showboating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He'll
That
hang on the rim a little bit longer, give a little bit like a smile to the camera dog. They had it one play where I think they called basket interference on him. I still think it was pretty whack. I wanted to see
Mhm.
the replay, but he came in and he tried to dunk it hard, missed the dunk, went up to get it, and I think on his way back down, he might have like grabbed the rim and then tried to like slam it down or something. They called basket interference, but he just hung on the rim afterwards, and his face was just in the camera. And I'm like, yo, this dude, he gets it, man. Like he's so
Yeah.
aware. He's so aware, and I
That's
I, I
kind of
love it. I
I
love
was
it
gonna
about
say
Jalen Durant. What'd you
after
say?
I was gonna say that's kind of been his staple after all those offensive rebounds and putback dunks. He kind of gives you that hang on the rim like for like 2 seconds before it
Mm-hmm.
gets too extensive and he gets called for a tech. But it's just to let you know that like I got the rebound and I'm gonna dunk it. So I
Boy,
think that's a pretty cool aspect to his game.
I like it because he's getting testy. Like I felt like early on in the season, he was trying to figure out basketball. Like he was trying to figure out like
Mhm.
what can I do? How tall am I? How big am I? And when you go back and you look at tape and you realize Jalen Duren, you're the biggest guy on the court, bro. Your
Yeah,
athleticism is crazy. Look how high you're getting up on these blocks, man. You're sending these things. You see his confidence now, like, wait, I'm doing this in the NBA at 18, 19 years old. You
yeah,
see him really, really starting to take that leap and starting to get not necessarily pride, but a surety or confidence in who he is, what his game is, the work that they're putting in, what the coaches are telling him. Because it's not like his coaches are sitting back saying, "Hey, we want you to be a gentle giant." They're saying, "No,
mhm,
you're Jalen freaking Duren. We
yeah,
drafted you. We told everybody draft night you are Sean Kemp, of the future. Basically, this is what they came out and stated. That's big praise, man. That's
yeah,
huge praise for a guy that went what 13th in the draft.
yeah,
That would be arguably the steal of the draft. And right now he's trending towards being the steal of the draft. And with some of the skill sets we see, I'm agreeing with some people with this notion of having some wrinkles of KG and Rashid. And as he develops, to see if he gets some more of that aspect of Sean Kemp, you already see it in those dunks, man. You see how he's
yeah,
putting the dunks just behind his head and just boom, like he's jumped off of a trampoline on some of
yeah.
these. It's been an awesome thing to see, and I love the swag that he's playing with right now. I do. He's made me very, very, very excited, man. Very excited for what the Pistons could be moving forward. You know,
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, it's something you can't teach either because you see a lot of big guys and they typically wanna just lay up the ball, but he's literally trying to dunk it and take the rim off every time. And
and
I think a lot of guys his size pretty much either I don't know, I'm not sure what it is. They aren't comfortable trying to dunk or being physical and trying to like just yamming over people, but they try to just finish with just a simple layup or
yeah,
try to use their
finesse and all
skill
that.
set. Yeah. So it's encouraging to see like people kind of return to that way, like Shaquille O'Neal. one of the best to ever do it. He was trying to do that every single time. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people got annoyed at how Yao Ming played because he was 7'6" and didn't kind of play with that same physical intensity. So I
No,
think it's good that Duren has that.
I love that we're talking about Jalen Duren, and we can bring up big men like Shaq, Dwight, Yao, because
Yeah.
we can see it. Like I don't know. Like I know with Saddiq Bey and Stewart and Killian Hayes and such, their first years, we were like, man, yeah, we could see it, but we still had some reserves.
Mhm.
With Jalen Duren, like we know what we loved about Andre Drummond, we know what we hated. This guy, Jalen Duren, is quickly becoming somebody who's all of what we loved about Andre Drummond, and doesn't really have much of what we didn't like about Andre Drummond. I don't know what many people expected coming into the season with him, because I didn't know what was going to happen. People were wondering, is he going to be too raw? Will he have to spend any time down in the G League? That's why I asked DJ Baker at the Motor City Cruise media day. Hey, at least we know that you can do a heck of a job with these guys. Those draft picks last year that went down there were awesome, and so it's interesting that Jalen Duren just absolutely never had plans for that. Never had plans for that. He never worked for that. He never like he clearly was like, I am an NBA starter level player. And that's my question to you. Do you believe he should be starting right now? Because I personally, I I don't I've noticed that Casey has often stated it's about who finishes the game. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily about who starts, it's about who finishes. And I believe that at the end of some of their wins, I believe their last couple of wins, it's been Jalen Duren who was actually in at the end of those games with fresh legs, making a difference and making an impact on that game. But there's some people who believe that if he starts as well as closes the game, that it gives the Pistons their best chance defensively to start the game rather than getting kind of run off the blocks. I wanted to kind of get your perspective on that, man. Jalen Duren, should he be starting now? Do you see some wrinkles in his game that say he should probably still be coming off the bench to try and feel things out? What's going on there?
Yeah, to your point, I think last night was the first time we've seen the Pistons kind of get blown out from the jump in a few weeks.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, so in terms of just being in the game defensively, I don't think that's much of a factor. But honestly, I think that Dwayne Casey is kind of experimenting with a lot now. Now that he's kind of getting the full complement of his players back. Um, so to have Jalen Duren, which would be another kind of experiment to test to see how that looks, um, I think he should save that for later in the season. Honestly, I think Duren is capable of starting, no doubt about it. He'll just have to make sure that he, like I said earlier, don't get into foul trouble too quick. Um, but right now, I think Dwayne Casey, he inserted Isaiah Livers at the 2 yesterday, and moved Saddiq back to the bench, which that kind of affected the second unit. You got Saddiq on the bench. Alec Burks was going off for double digit performances, 17, 18 points per game off the bench. And last night he was scoreless.
Mm,
So now you got to figure out
that's a
how
great
that
observation.
affects, yeah, the second unit. So I think he's dealing with a lot of pieces right now, especially while Ivy and Cade are out. And once Ivy comes back, then you'll have to figure something else out. So I think it's a revolving door of guys in and out the lineup. And I think he just needs to find some consistency right now. So if he's going to go with Isaiah Livers at the 2 and continue to bring Saddiq off the bench, that's something that he needs to kind of work with for a few more games or another stretch of the season before he kind of goes to in a different direction and kind of brings Duren in as a starter.
Yeah, yeah. I am hesitant on starting him just yet. I believe he has the
Mhm.
talent too, like you said as well. But I believe there's just a few little wrinkles there that I believe it. He right now in his rookie year can learn better from seeing guys like Stu and Bagley who are starting the game. And when you have those three bigs there, it's not just Duren in the paint getting swamped by the opposing team now. Now you can put another big out there with them. It was awesome to see the different minutes and the different lineups, like you said. Just to speak to your point, Casey really shuffling those bigs, those trios. It's the first time he had that trio of bigs since 7 games ago when Stewart stubbed his toe, and that was the first time that they had seen that trio for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Last night we saw lineups with Stewart and Duren, Bagley and Stewart, and Bagley and Duren, and I believe all of them provide some hope. But I wanted to get your take on this one, as Casey is kind of turning the wheel on these bigs. Which big man pairing did you like the best, or do you think offers the most to the Pistons?
That's a good question. Um, to be honest, I think I like Duren and Stewart the most, just because you can have Duren in there protecting the paint. He can go for rebounds. He can block shots. He can go for offensive rebounds and kind of get putbacks. And then you can have Stewart just out on the perimeter, getting up as many shots as he wants.
He was doing
Last
that last night in the fourth.
Yeah, last night he made a career high 5 3-pointers. He attempted, I think, eight or nine. So that's a pretty high volume. But when he's making them and knocking them down, especially towards the end of the game like that, that's something that you can kind of build around. And it helps space the floor when you think about it like that, because that's what you want when you play with two bigs. You don't want two bigs kind of clogging up the paint and messing up your spacing and rotations and things of that nature. So I think that was my personally my favorite duo of bigs. But then you also had Marvin Bagley come out and hit 3 straight threes to start the game. So
Yeah, just to
um,
complicate things, right?
I don't think we expected that. That was the first time it's happened in his career, that he had three-pointers. So
Wow.
if he can continue to kind of knock it down at that clip, then it may be able to be the same type of dynamic when you have Stewart in there, kind of knocking down those threes too.
Yeah, man, you can see it. You can see it. I know Jeff and I we talked about this with some lineups, and I noticed that our bigs were different, and that's what kind of prompted this for me. I was like, you know what? I wanted to ask Mike and somebody else, who has a fresh set of eyes on this team every day as well, what they thought too. And for me, the pairing that just most excites and kind of provides a little bit of that grit that we're used to from our Detroit big men. The one
Mm,
that kind of harkens back to the Ben Wallace Rasheed type of combo, it is Duran and Stewart for me. When I see those guys go out there and they play with just a little bit different, just I don't know, menace to them on the defensive end. They just do. Like I did you see that play, man? I posted the clip of Duran. Who are they playing? Who are they playing? Who are they playing? Was it? Oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot who they were playing. But it was during he was like holding on to the ball and he went up for a shot, I think, or a rebound, grabbed it. Somebody else trying to came in and they were like tussling over the ball. They called a jump
yeah,
ball. He refused to let go of it.
and Durant wouldn't let go. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I
bro.
remember
Who
that.
they playing? I can't believe I forget the team. I
It may
forget.
have been it may have been the Cavs. It was a home game because it was right in front of us, I think.
Yeah, I think it was the Cavs. It was either the Cavs or the Clippers or somebody, bro. And he just refused to let go of the ball. And then like two more players came in. I think I remember seeing Garland's like static electricity here, like come into the scene, like grabbing the ball. And it's three of those guys, and he's just sitting there. And the ref comes in, he grabs the ball, and he looks at Darren like, go,
Yeah,
let go. And he just smirks, let's go. And then it's like order and peace is restored. And what's even more funny is some of those, was his teammates around, and then the the more broad clip, yeah, you see Knox and Burks right there, and in the broader clip, you see more teammates around. It's just like these guys knew he don't need our help. He doesn't need our help,
yeah,
and I love that menacing aspect about it because I believe Stewart has that too. You see guys who they try to chirp. You saw Randall last night try to chirp a little bit, but I don't think people want those problems with Stewart. Obviously, kind of when you first dunk and you looking at your guy, I think Randall was like, "Oh crap, man, I'm sitting here barking at Stewart." Wrong guy. That's not Bagley. It's a difference.
yeah.
You'd be shocked if you saw Stewart not respond or react, but that's who he is, and that's what I've been talking about is missing from this team. You see it, out of Duren. You see it kind of out of Stewart. I don't know how many more people I see that out of. I'm not saying I'm advocating for people hurting people. I'm not advocating for players fighting, but we know what Detroit sports is, Mike. We know what the Detroit Pistons in the history of NBA lore is known for. We know this. So when I see that, I'm like, more of that. Like the fan in me is like, yo, where has that been? I'm tired of it. The going to work Pistons used to say, Rasheed used to say, we don't give up and ones.
Yeah.
They gonna fill us. Eldon Campbell, bro. You remember Uncle Eldon? I'm rocking my
Yeah.
Uncle Eldon today. He used to drop that club on people, bro. Like nobody was getting an and one off of him, bro. Nobody. And that's what I'm saying. That type of tenacity to the fact that your teammates, that your opposing team, they're gonna know that they played you. You can't have them come up here and race to 140 points in your gym on your floor in your St. Cecilia, jerseys. You can't do that, man. You got to go out there and play like this is that gym. Those gyms represent a little bit more. And they're talking about, we're not born, we're built this way. You got to go out there and show that. And that's what's missing to me. I believe that they would have a couple more wins if just a little bit more of that grit was there. Just a little bit more of that physicality. And you got to learn that. You have to learn that. This to me is probably the most important of Troy Weaver's rebuild years. This is year 3 of it for him. Though Coach Casey was here right before it, he was brought in to win now. And then they quickly changed everything and told him, hey, do something that you haven't done before, and that's build and win from scratch. So I do with Casey, I'm like, okay, he's managing something. Troy Weaver told us he's managing, and until he gets the full complement on the roster, I don't believe that his full assessment is going to take place on Casey. He's going to have a full roster. He's going to have the full complement, and he's going to have one of the best players in the league. I'm not going to play Cade Cunningham like that. I don't care what anybody says. He's one of the best players in the league to me. Just hands down. Yeah, people said he started the season slow, Mike. His slow start to the season was stats better than his than his stats last season.
Yeah.
That was his slow start, man. But sheesh, I don't know. I really like that pairing. That just kind of got me off on a tangent, dog. Stewart and Duren. I do, because you're
Yeah.
right. Stewart often finds himself when he's playing the 5, they're trying extremely hard. And I said this last year, trying very hard. Probably one of the most try hard guys we've seen in a Pistons uniform in the last 10 years, 12 years, 13 years. But sometimes there are limitations, his size, his hand size, his height, things like that, where you see a taller guy go right over his back. And I'm like, call the over the back, but you realize you just can't. The size and height difference is different. But if he's matched up more with 4s, and then, certain lineups, even maybe a 3, I think it puts him in an advantage if Duren is the one battling for rebounds in the paint. It puts Stu in an advantage now, where all that tenacity and energy that he's expending that it used to be against guys like Embiid, now he's battling against 4s, guys more
Yeah.
that we know he can probably physically impose his will and dominate. Now all of a sudden he's not losing those 50-50 battles to those types of guys. I think that one balances things out. But you're right. Duren, he averages about 2.2, 2.3 fouls per game. But when you look at the box scores, when I actually went and looked at it, you were exactly right. This guy got some wild swings, man. He'll have like 3 fouls in bunches. And then a game where it's like no fouls. And we were like, oh yeah, no fouls. And the next game is like 3 fouls in like the first half. It's like, goodness gracious. You only play 8 minutes, bro. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping he gets that under control. But it's still his rookie season, man. If this was next year, coming off of cap space, coming off of draft capital, oh man, bro, I'd be in here like that Elmo meme with the fire going behind me. It'd be like, bro, it'd be
Yeah.
lit. But
I think it is encouraging. I wanted to bring this up that
definitely.
I think the Pistons went out on their West Coast road trip and learned how to compete on a nightly basis. Every single game they played, when you think about the Clippers, the Lakers, the Kings, Denver and Utah, they were able to get back-to-back
Short-handed.
wins. Short-handed. And I think it's just because it became a total team effort. Like you knew you had to get something or give something in order for the team to be successful. Like we got a 21-point performance from, Kevin Knox. Kind of resurgence because he's kind of had an up and down career since he was drafted by the Knicks in 2018. We saw multiple scoring bursts from Alec Burks, and I think you got to have more of that. You got to have I don't want to say he needs to be your main focal offensive weapon coming off the bench, because now that Saddiq's in that unit, you got to find a way to get him his shots too. But Alec Burks has to be a focal point on that bench.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to bring up, and just in case for the fans that are worried, Pistons didn't get their 6th win last year until January 1st.
Whoa, say that
They,
again, Mike.
they
Say
didn't
that again, bro.
they
What?
didn't get their 6th win until the New Year's Day. It is the end of November, and they have an entire month to kind of get that 6th win. And I'm sure they'll get it some point.
You give
But
them a whole month, boy. Look at that, whole month
yeah,
and a
but
little bit of change.
they're on pace to kind of do better than they did last season.
Yeah,
You can just see it. I think a lot of expectations were put on this team, that they had to make the play-in tournament, that they had to kind of win 35 games, and that just isn't the case. Not with this roster, and not with the injuries that they've had. I think when you have Cade Cunningham in there, and you have Bowie, you have Jaden Ivey, they're all clicking at the same time. I think that's best case scenario, but I think this team is still figuring it out.
but that's fair, and I'm so glad that you stated that, because with some of the wins they've had with the different lineups and shorthanded, you can tell that the talent is there. These guys just don't know how to play, and they're still trying to figure out how to fit. But if the talent is all there, by the time they would click in a normal subset of a season, if they could go on a little bit of a run last year of about a 500 spurt,
Yeah,
just under 500 after All-Star break and games that Kay Cunningham played in. What could they do this year, adding Bojan, Jalen Duren, and Jaden Ivey, Alec Burks, Kevin Knox to the mix? I don't think that Troy wanted this, was necessarily setting out for this team to be bad. He put it out there. We're ready to go out there and compete on a nightly basis. And yes, to your point, the last 5 or 6 games before last night, they were doing that. They impressed me on that West Coast trip. A lot of people say, "Oh, 0-6 incoming." That's not what happened. They had an opportunity to come back, in my opinion, 500 on that West Coast trip, and
yeah,
they ended it 2-1 with some really
yeah.
really good wins.
Two
You
and
know,
six, yeah,
yeah,
or 2 and 4. I'm sorry, yeah,
2-4 overall.
yeah,
Yep, and on the back end of it, I think that those last 2 wins came in the last 3 of that road trip, I believe.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because they were back to back, and there was some, man, there was some big plays there. You talking about wins over Denver and Utah, 2 teams that historically have held some pretty wild winning streaks over us. I'm so glad that this team was able to go in there and do that. But with the full complement, I do believe at their peak, they should have been, you know, able to compete for the play-in. But without that, with this team still being on a better pace than last year, that's a good thing. That's a good point to bring up, man. You brought up several pretty good points just to kind of keep things in perspective. So they're taking some marginal steps forward. I know it is not what everybody wants to see. A lot of people are upset with the lineups that Casey's doing, but without your full complement of players, without really knowing how these guys play, it's gonna be tough. Now with Saddiq, something that I've seen in his game, maturation wise, and I want to kind of get into this as we kind of close Troy Weaver's first draft class season review, because you got some decisions they're gonna have to make over the next year or two for Killian Hayes, or with Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart, and Saddiq Bey. Do you believe that Saddiq Bey should just focus on being a 3-and-D player, or do you believe he should continue to expand, or at least attempt to expand his game? Now, there's a lot of people out there who believe there's some version of Saddiq Bey that can just kind of be this 3-point shooter and focus on being the best defensive player he can be, and kind of just staying out the way in all other parts. But I see a player with Saddiq Bey right now who is getting to the free throw line. He's drawing fouls. He's putting pressure on a defense where I'm looking like, yo, the other team, they got guys that can get to the paint off the dribble. Why can't none of our guys? We're just passing it around the perimeter and doing nothing. Then you see Saddiq Bey able to go in there and literally, doesn't matter if he's slow or fast, he got kind of that K Cunningham ability to get to where he wants to get to on the court and at least draw a foul. And so I see that from Saddiq. He's not as efficient at finishing as you would want him to, but he's able to get there. So I wanted to get your take on that with Saddiq Bey. What do you believe would help him more if he kind of settled more into a role of a 3-point shooter and then kind of try and D up on the other end, or if he was still kind of following this journey towards maturing his game, kind of being this pseudo Corliss Williamson, so to speak?
yeah. I think he needs to find a healthy balance of both, because right now we're seeing him. Um, First of all, the defense is not giving him the 3-point shot.
Mhm.
I want to make it a point to say he's not getting a lot of open looks from three. So there are
Chasing
a
him
lot
off
of
the
times
line.
where, yeah, there are a lot of times where he can't take the shot. So he has to find a way to kind of create for himself or create for others. And the best way he knows how to do that is to put the ball on the floor and try to drive to the paint. I think it's interesting because we saw him come back from injury, and one of the first plays he had was I think it was the game against Cleveland. He had Evan Mobley on him, and he kind of did a reverse on the baseline and went and got an N1 at the rim.
Yep.
And that was just kind of a good example of the skill set that he has when he's run off the 3-point line. Like he can get to the basket, he can kind of finish, especially in spurts. But I think he needs to find a healthy balance where he's able to kind of do that and also get that shot up. Even if it's contested, like still just take the shot because we know he's able to make 3-point shots. It's a guy that scored 51 points. We know he's able to score. We know he's able to kind of find his rhythm and get in the rhythm really quick. So I think the more 3-point shots he gets up, the more it'll benefit because then you got to respect his shot and you got to respect that he'll be able to put the ball on the floor and get to the hole.
Yeah, yep, and he's more of a rhythm type of scorer as well, and that's my
Yeah.
thing. I feel like the scouting report might be run him off the 3-point line. Don't let him shoot. You know, when he gets going, that's when he's the best to the Pistons. But if you run him off the line, then you force him into his inefficiencies. And if that's the scouting report on him, I understand then why the whole summer the talk was Saddiq learning to add some versatility to his game to diversify his moves. Become a player that can operate even if his shot's not falling or if the defense is trying to force him into inefficient play. And I believe that volume this year is the key for Saddiq Bey. On a year where the expectation realistically at your best was to compete for the play in, those are the years that I believe you can learn while like on the fly. This is the year if you're really looking at this thing, taking a step back, and you're not looking at this from a fan perspective, but you're looking at this from a perspective of everything you're trying to plot. You know, where you want your team to be next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and the longevity of your program, then you understand what these guys are doing. They did it kind of last year too. You know, Saddiq Bey, people were wondering at the beginning of the season what was wrong with Saddiq Bey. All the same questions. All the same questions. Similar shooting percentage from three as last year. I saw Sean Murphy, shout out to him from half court and Woodward Pistons, man. He posted it and they were about 28% like this year, 29% last year from three around the same time, you know, and but his game was different. He was doing more of the same. He was trying to do all this dribble drive stuff. You know what, Mike? It looked worse last year, bro.
Mm.
It looked worse last year. Go back and look at his stuff last year trying to get into the paint. He was not as good as he is this year. I'm not saying he's a great or super good at getting into the paint, but you can see that there's progress. So if this team is supposed to be, which all of us openly and willingly, no matter what we believe this team is supposed to be this year, we all say that they're still like 2 years away. 2 years from really, really, really competing. What do you want Saddiq Bey to be in those 2 years? And where does he learn this? Because we've seen too many of these guys do it in the gyms and it doesn't translate when it's time to put it on the court. Saddiq Bey looks like he's a guy who's actually going out there and saying, I've worked on this in the gyms. I will be good at this here, and get the experience. You're the guy out there on the court. You're the guy who's going to get the opportunities. So go out there and work on it. That's my take. If you know it's going to be a pretty rough year, then put yourself in position to make sure next year won't be the same. You got to take some improvements. You got to because Saddiq has to be that guy that can be versatile. When you think about Corliss Williamson and the way that the game was played back then, being able to hit that mid range and then also being able to put your back to the basket, scoring a post, being able to pump fake from the perimeter and drive in,
Yeah.
that was super, super, super valuable for a guy coming off the bench playing against bench defenders.
Mhm.
As well as playing, if you're going to be playing with guys like Marvin Bagley and Alec Burks, who defenses have to be honest to, realistically, that could open up a lot for Saddiq Bey if he's a versatile player. So I know it's going to look ugly. It's going to look ugly, man. It's going to be times where realistically you're like wondering what's the deal here. But
Yeah.
for me personally, Mike, I don't know if you feel the same way. You got to give this Saddiq Bey thing some patience. Whether or not you believe he should be starting or not, he needs the time and he needs the volume to be to learn this thing, to feel this thing out, to play against NBA defenses, to get that confidence and know what you could do. So I don't know, man. That's my spin on it. That's my take on Saddiq Bey. Um, what about Isaiah Stewart? I know we talked about him a little bit earlier. We're gonna save Killian Hayes for our last player of this Troy Weaver review. What do you believe that Isaiah Stewart is more a victim of like his position, and the effectively the rotations kind of being off with all the injuries, or do you believe he's just a guy who is just everywhere you play him, it may be just out of just not a bad fit, but out of not the most natural fit, even though he's
Yeah.
going to give you a bunch.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering, what do you do with Isaiah Stewart? Is he the starter of the future? Is he the four? Obviously, if he can start hitting that three, is he the four that you put next to a guy like Duren long term? Is that your championship battery? You know how I feel about it. You already know how I feel about Duren and Stewart. But I just wanted to get just your kind of rough view of Isaiah Stewart and any of the things that I've banted about. If you're kind of feeling them or want to take a stab at them, I just want to kind of get your take on it as the Pistons continue to look at what they're going to do with these players moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you drafted Isaiah Stewart, you didn't have obviously Jaden Ivey, you didn't have Jalen Duren,
Mhm.
you didn't have Cade Cunningham either. So I think it's interesting because you had Killian, you had when you didn't have Killian either. Killian came the next year, so you had Saddiq and you had Isaiah Stewart. So it's been a slow and gradual rebuild. And Isaiah Stewart is a big part of that. You want him to
Yeah.
compete nightly on defensive end. I think a lot of times when we're looking at Isaiah, a lot of people are looking at the offense just because he's trying to transition to a more of a perimeter player. But I think when you got to factor in what he brings on the defensive end, like not a lot of people try him at the rim. He got caught last night just because he was trailing the play, and I think Brunson kicked it out to Randall for that dunk. But he's not one that a lot of people test, and it's because of his physicality and his intensity. But I think where his limitations come in at, he's not that kind of scores on the inside a lot, just on like post up plays. I think he's the beneficiary of a lot of inside passes, especially when Cade's in the game. I notice every time Cade is in the game, if
Yeah.
they get the pick and roll, Cade is looking to kind of feed Isaiah inside rather than when Isaiah is out in the 3-point line with pretty much everyone else. So I think that's a big piece to it. I think he's definitely missing Cade, who's able to kind of get him the ball on the inside and get him easy layups.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big factor to it too.
Yeah, and you know what? With these guys, because I'm on the side of I wanted to see Stu come out here and prove he could really lock down at least being a four, being one of the top three
Yeah,
guys on this rotation for years to come. And I believe he's that guy. The next thing that I wanted to see is if he was capable of being able to lock down being that starting four for years to come. But when I told people in the beginning of the season, I wasn't quite sure if the starting front court was on this team that was going to be around when the Pistons start competing. People are like, what, Stewart? And I'm like, look, I'm not trying to hate. I'm trying to be as, you think about this thing, man. When you're looking at these teams at the time, Stewart was playing effectively the five. The
yeah,
Pistons didn't have a five on the squad. If Stewart's playing your five, it's going to be very, very tough for you to win a championship. That's not a knock on Stewart as a player. That means he's playing out of position. Yeah, that means that the roster is unbalanced. You got to kind of do something else. That's going to fall more on the front office and such. And clearly, they took notice of that. They took notice, or else Duren wouldn't be here right now. They didn't draft Duren and say all these nice things about him to say, yeah, he's going to be our starting five, off our six man, backing up our center off the bench for years to come. Yeah, I think that this was move done to back up a little bit of what you're saying. You can't coach, you cannot teach the intangibles that Isaiah Stewart has. The more and more that I see this guy play, he just comes right out of injury last night, bro, and just continues to show exactly what he is. And you're
Yeah.
right. There's a few guys that'll get up. Julius Randle is one of those guys. He's one of those guys. He doesn't care who you are. He's just gonna do stuff. You'll block him or you'll get dunked on. It is what it is. But these other guys, Stewart is a guy that we talked about earlier in the show. He makes people think. And for the 4 spot and seeing how successful Al Horford has been, I'm
Yeah.
actually all for that, man. I'm seeing this maturation of Isaiah Stewart, and I'm starting to see Al Horford like behavior. I want to see him be a little bit more of a menace, rebounding the ball. I really do, like Al Horford has shown to be. But from a just a standpoint of the player that he called out from the beginning of the season, of who he's kind of looking at or modeling his game after whatnot, I see he looked at a lot of Al Horford.
Mhm.
That I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see it. Like some people thought that the threes were a little bit of a fluke. He's been hitting these threes at a really good clip the last 50 attempts. A really
Yeah.
good clip. I saw James Edwards posted something yesterday about it as well. And you think it's here to stay? The
Yeah, I
three-point
think so.
shooting? Yeah,
Definitely, definitely. And in
yeah.
order to kind of remain competitive and remain an asset in this league, you got to be able to hit a three. You can't just be kind of one dimensional offensively, especially in this league. So I definitely think it's here to stay.
Yeah. And I want to see him try and hit that mid-range a little bit more, take a little bit more. Sometimes I believe that he has the ability to step in, even and take it, and I've seen him do it a couple times. He last night, man, I'm gonna try and find this clip and put it up there. Last night he had a game where he had a play where he just kind of freestyled it. He kind of grabbed the rebound, dribbled in, dribbled between his legs, crossed over, came back middle, and then dumped off the pass to somebody who like threw it back out to the 3-point line or whatever. But it was a
Mm.
really nice play because it kind of shows versatility and the skill set of Isaiah Stewart that I don't believe everything is being on display yet. And again, like I said, I believe a lot of the big men right now are playing within their natural strengths rather than
Mhm.
kind of stepping outside of what they're used to doing. And the last player I want to talk about here is Killian Hayes. This is a guy who I'm just gonna call this guy Cedar Point, bro. That's it. It's Cedar Point. You talking about a roller coaster of a player, man. We saw his start to the season last year. We were like, oh my goodness. Then you see him go through that nice stretch, a good stretch. I know Rod actually highlighted his 13 game stretch he had within a larger sample size of about 25 games towards the end of the last season, where we were like, you know what? Killian. That's what we want to see, and he's doing it against NBA talent. We saw him all off season. We saw him in the preseason, and then the regular season hit. And even Casey stated, "We don't know what happened. We got to figure this out. We don't know what happened, but is whatever was going on in the preseason is different." A lot of people, as we continue to go on in the season, someone pointed out, and I think it was Jeff who pointed out his field goal attempts. They're just different types of attempts, and they've gone way down. In preseason, we remarked that, "Wow, look at Killian Hayes." Well, he was taking the same amount of shot attempts as who? Jaden Ivey and Kay Cunningham. As
Yeah.
soon as the season started, those shot attempts went way down. His role seemed to change, and the players he was playing with off the bench were just different as well. So I now obviously he's on another uptick. We've seen him kind of click. I see him personally being a lot more aggressive, getting to his spots, dictating more or less the offense rather than just kind of going through the plays. But man, what's your take on Killian Hayes and this on this upswing? Is it a mirage? Can we believe in it? Is this Killian Hayes and this style of play is this something we're going to continue to see and him build on, or what, man? I got to get your take on this.
Yeah, I think Killian is kind of taking advantage of the opportunity that he's being presented, especially with Cade out. He's the lead point guard now while Cade is injured. Ivy's hurt, so he's getting a little bit more responsibility with just facilitating the offense. And I think he's aggressive, man. He's looking confident. He's looking for that mid-range shot. I think a lot of times he tried to get that three-point shot going, either from catch and shoot or just off the dribble. But I think he's just really looking to get to his spots in the mid range, and I think he's benefiting from it. And defensively, I think he's locked in too. A lot of times, fans gets wrapped up on how aggressive he is being on the offensive end, but a lot of his energy is kind of spent on the defensive end too.
Mhm.
So
It's a good point.
when you think about it, he's a two-way player. And when you take into consideration that he's getting his guys involved, he's made a lot of good passes this season. I think that's one of the most probably slept on skill sets about Killian because he's able to kind of get his teammates involved, throw lobs, and
Yep.
do things of that nature. So I think he's playing well. Last night he had 11 points, 5 of 11 from the field. But the night before that, against Phoenix and Cleveland, he had 17 and 16. So
Yep.
that's a really good spot for Killian to be in, especially while that they're kind of ailing at that guard spot.
Yeah, you want to see him take advantage. This is year 3. This is the first draft pick of Troy Weaver's era as GM. Here as Pistons GM. You want to see him be able to show that something is starting to click, something there is sticking, that you've learned something, that there's some evolution to your game, and being a guy who got kind of relegated to bench, not bench as it relates to being benched, but losing your starting position, coming off the bench, you're being given a new role. Sometimes you don't get that opportunity that comes back around that you can prove and show, actually, no, I can do this. Irregardless of what his role will be when Cade and Ivy come back. I believe it's highly important for the confidence of Killian Hayes, for the value of Killian Hayes, no matter if you're going to use him on your team or see what you have as it relates to trade value, even. Rod, he's quick to say, no, look, man. Troy makes sure that value of his players is sky high, and what we're seeing out of Killian Hayes right now is something much more indicative of a player who's not just a throw-in and a deal, but a guy who has a lot, in my opinion, to still be uncovered. I think that value is more valuable to the Pistons. I do. Um, I just do. I like what I see from Killian Hayes. I don't believe that he would be somebody long term that it would be too difficult to find a role and to lock up here. But obviously, who knows? That's for the guys like Troy and the agents and all of that. But just kind of conjecturing based on things that we've seen from years past. Killian Hayes is a guy who, if this is the trend that we see, and we believe that this is a guy that's here to stay, and that this level of production will stay even when Cade Cunningham and Jade Ivy comes back. And by level of production, I don't mean necessarily the same amount of stats, but the efficiency. So we shouldn't see a different Killian. Like, do you believe that this is the Killian that we're going to see when they get back? So obviously he'll take a few less shots per game, but are we going to see a diminutive Killian, or are we seeing a Killian who's actually picking his spots, going out there looking like the guy who what Coach Casey said he need to go out there and play American pickup ball and get a girlfriend? Are we seeing that Killian?
Yeah, I think that's up to Killian. I mean, he said he knows what he has to do in order to stay confident. It goes back to that game at Boston where he scored 16 points, went 7 to 12 from the field. I talked to him after that game, and he pretty much said he this is the game that did it for him. So if he's able to kind of keep that up, I think that bodes well for the Pistons.
I like that, man. I like that. I mean, overall, I'm still bullish on all these guys: Killian Hayes, Isaiah Stewart, Saddiq Bey from Troy Weaver's first draft class. I believe that these guys are going to be here for some time. I'm not going to be surprised or shocked if any of them wound up in a trade, because Troy Weaver is going to do what's best for the organization. If that happens, obviously you trust Troy, you just do. But he drafted these guys, and so you still trust Troy. You trust the process with your draft picks. I don't know if we've ever, as Piston fans, a lot of people that haven't been a part of a rebuild like this, where you're relying heavily on the players that you've drafted. We have been accursed as Detroit fans with draft picks, especially with Pistons. So I think this one's just a little bit different. We don't know how to be patient. Generally, when we sign somebody and our teams are good, those players are what they're supposed to be right away. You know, but we're looking at a situation right now where year 3, we have what, a total of 6 first round draft picks that we're depending on. Killian Hayes, Saddiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren. Then you want to throw Marvin Bagley in there, who was what, a number 2 overall pick just a few short seasons ago. That's 7 young guys with high expectations, man, who have all come from situations where they were probably the man themselves in their prior situations. With Bagley, it sucks because he came from a situation where like we say with Knox, these guys kind of got into bad basketball situations for themselves. So I don't know. Overall, I believe these are. I'm still bullish on them. Still rooting. Still looking for their journeys to become complete, especially as you see them taking these steps forward. It's almost like looking at it in NBA 2K. We're like a lot more patient with our 2K leagues, but with our Pistons in real life, bro, we want these boys to win right now, right now. But anything else that you wanted to share?
Nah, I think we covered it, man.
I think that's it.
It'll be interesting to see how they handle Luka Doncic when he and the Mavericks come on Thursday. That'll also be the return of Kemba Walker,
Mm.
so that'll be interesting.
That's hey, bro, Kimba versus Kojo. That's what I'm trying to see go down right now.
Yeah,
Let's get
I'm
it.
not sure if he'll play right away, but he'll definitely be in the building.
Jeez. You know what? Luca's had some good games against the Pistons, but I like the way that Cade Cunningham played him. I did. I did. I wished we could have gotten that matchup in this game. But I believe the Pistons, you after you lose 140 to 110 in an uncharacteristic fashion, because you're right, it was not indicative of what these guys were on a tough West Coast trip. I think that you're gonna see a different level of physicality this next night going in. I don't see them tomorrow night coming out and getting raced, but you can see it. You can see it happen. I personally think that their level of physicality is gonna be a little bit different. You don't want to get punked like that twice in a week. You just don't. So,
Yeah,
all right then, man. I think that is a word, bro. I'm appreciative for you dropping by as always on the Woodward Pistons podcast.
no
For
problem.
Jeffrey Freddie and for Rod Beard, bro. It's always a pleasure. What was you gonna say?
No, I was saying no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Hey, well, look, we got the Pistons quarter of the season review out the way. We talked about them getting blown out by the Knicks. I didn't think there was too much constructive talk out of that game, bro. Like there were different things we could talk out of, pull out, but that's the games you just really, bro. They gave up 14 offensive rebounds. They tired. They got rebounded by 20 points in the paint by 20. That looked like a game where as the game went on, they looked tired. Like the Knicks would had like layup line stuff. So I'm glad with the level of conversation that we had, man. And your insight, as always, is A1, bro. I love your perspective on the game. Bringing up different points that you don't really hear a lot of people, at least fans, when they're talking about their angst from game to game. I'm hoping that what they're hearing is stuff that can add a little bit of perspective to this rebuild process, man. You guys are gonna look back on this, in my opinion, in about 2 to 3 years, and you're gonna enjoy the process. You're gonna look back on it and realize that these players are taking the right steps forward. That this organization has not been afraid to make the right move when they've had to make the right move. We know how much Jeremy Grant was loved by the front office, but we also know how much the front office wants this Pistons team to be what they're supposed to be. And I don't think that moving forward, I don't think that's going to be any different with any of these players. So if Killian, if Isaiah, if Saddiq, if they are, if Troy is seeing something different, he's going to make sure that's handled. You know, that's the comfort that you can have, I guess, as fans. I know they're little, still trying to fill out Troy Weaver. Yeah, I believe in his pedigree, and I think a lot of fans are still trusting in him. How can you not? Like, look at the players he has. But that first draft class is one that a lot of fans are, rightfully starting to question, and some are rightfully starting to prop up. So I'm glad we got to get into it, man. But let's get that drum roll going for the way out.
Let's do it.
Definitely. For Jeff Iafrady, Mike Curtis of the Detroit News, and Detroit Kool-Aid. Hey, yo, for the legend Detroit News Rod Beard. Hey, look, we're going to see you guys next time. And let us know in the comments as well. What's your quarter of the season review? What do you want to see these guys improve in? What's the biggest improvement that you have seen as well? Put it down in the comments first. We're going to wrap about it on the next episode. Till next time.